caveat with that is that you do replace some constraints on the contractor to make sure that you can get a consistent source of the concrete for the entire time. Because if you change aggregate, or if you change their, Portland cement supplier, that could have an effect on the color. There's going to be a little bit of variation just from truck to truck, but you want to make sure that they have consistent material. So that's going to be an alternate bid item. There will be some incremental cost increase. I think the aesthetic was to try to keep something that's toned down from the white.
Right. Because the alternative to that is, as I discussed with you, is you put this sprayed white coating on it.
Right.
That turns it very bright white as opposed to a concrete color.
Right. Initially, it's bright white and it gradually fades. The whole idea is it's a curing compound. It keeps the moisture in so the concrete cures properly. This other product will do that. There's a little bit of a premium for that product. It's not excessive, so I think it's fairly honest.
And so it'll look concrete color.
It'll look like
toned down anyway,
yes,
from the white. Okay.
If you have a concrete basement,
Right.
and they didn't spray any white stuff on it, it'll look that.
And we'll be able to see that, we can get a visual on both options.
Yeah, the white option is, I think most people are familiar with what Orange did is they used the white curing compound. And clear is clear. Part of what we'll have the contractor do is work test sections with that coat, and then we'll be able to go back to that to make sure that they're having a consistent color.
Right. Well,
Nice.
thank you for finding that solution. That really helps in terms of the aesthetic. Great to hear.
It might be nice to see a side to side when it ultimately comes to that, so we're thinking that.
But the point is, we know what the white looks like, and this will look better.
I think you're right, I just would love to just
So,
see it, so,
There's not another option, so.
I have a question, Don. I haven't seen the plans yet, but the manhole covers that are on the east side there, are they gonna be integrated into the sidewalks in some places, or are they gonna be like, is it moving because of?
In some area, it's a little bit of both. In a lot of areas, we try to avoid it. In some areas, the avoidance might push us into trees or some other obstacles. So what we do is really a manhole adjust to grade, so that they have to set the casting so that it's flush with the sidewalk, which is, there's probably a dozen.
Yeah.
Anything else to Don? Okay. You want to make a motion and adopt this? I think
You want to look at it
Yeah.
still, and I don't know, you guys want to look
I
at it
would
still.
love to see it, I just feel like.
I mean, we got the email on the 10th, so we've had 9 days.
Well,
that's right at town too, but.
I looked at it right before the meeting, so.
I understand that I was not available right before the meeting. I would love to be able to get some of these things electronically, it justifies, I mean,
We do a meeting next week.
yeah, we have a meeting in 1 week.
We do it the next week.
I don't understand, I mean, I think everyone is probably fine with it,
All right,
but it seems like it's long.
we will hold off till next week. It's gonna put our bidding behind, but anticipate it's gonna go. Don, why don't you be ready
We'll be
to
cute.
go, and we'll vote on it next week. How's that? Okay, we'll table that for now. Next, we have a motion to authorize the city of, pardon me. We don't have that, we did that. We have ordinance 2024-24, which amends section 4 of ordinance 2024-13. I'll turn this to Steve and Tony for comment.
Right before, can I suggest we flip 9 and 10? Because a lot of the discussion in 10 may influence what goes in that ordinance. At least there's some points that I have to.
I have no objection to that.
Is everyone okay with that? So we do number 10 first?
I think that's fine.
Okay, so why don't we pause on ordinance 24, and we'll move to a discussion on the appointments of the Charter Review Commission. The purpose of this was to initially just bring the public up to date regarding where we stood on the charter process. There were a a number of applications received from many wonderful people in our city. 20
Mind if I take this?
How many?
Do you mind if I take this?
32 in a second. And we're gonna be considering that. Tony, you wanna jump in?
I was gonna say, there were 32 applications that came in before the deadline. One of the 32 applicants did not meet the residency requirement of 3 years, according to this paperwork. We got many very qualified people, so it's gonna be tough to choose among all of those qualified residents. But I think we can come up with a commission of 9 and proceed as we have laid out in the process that everybody's seen. Just want to make sure that everybody who did apply knows that we really appreciate their application, and we will be communicating with them writing somehow to let them know that we did appreciate the application and whether they're
Mr. Lemay?
Yeah, so just a few issues I want to just re-chat on this, and one is, and you're right about the applications. One of my concerns is that while I know a handful of these people, and there's a whole group of people who look very well qualified with their applications, but I've never met them, don't know who they are. And I'm hesitant to go ahead with the final appointments until I think we at least have a chance to talk to some of the people in an interview process that we think are highly qualified. I'm not suggesting we interview every single person on this. Because I saw some that had applications, I thought, wow, this person could be fantastic based on their background, their experience, their community involvement, but I don't know them. And we're going to discuss later individuals in executive session, but maybe some of you do, but there are a number of those, and I would really like to take a measure of their personality, their attitude, do they play well with others, just some elements of there to make sure that they would be a positive, productive member of the committee. And it's because of that that I'm hesitating to not to go forward with just looked at the paper alone and having, and I want to have the discussion, because if 3 or 4 of you know someone and highly recommend it, I say, I would go with your judgment on that. But I suspect there's maybe a large number that none of us know or know enough to say, I have a real sense of the character of that person, and they would be a great additive to the committee. So that's one point I have, so let's chat about that first.
Well, let's not chat about that. Let's leave that for the executive session.
Okay.
And I think that might be getting into names.
Well, no, I just want to know, or as a process point, do we want to pause and have some measure of interviews? Not talking about any names, but just, is that an amendment to our process we want to think
I
about?
think that'll come out of the executive session where we need to go there.
But I think it's a fair conversation. I
It
share
is.
some of your same concerns that some people I don't know and isn't giving them a fair shot.
I'm not
think-
saying-
but
I'm not saying
we
it
can
isn't.
talk about
I'm not
it.
saying it isn't.
No,
I'm
and
just
I
saying
agree,
that
Tony, we can wait to talk about it
it
until we
come
see
out of
where
the
we.
executive session.
There are actually a lot that I didn't know in this paperwork. They seem like wonderful people, but they just have never had an occasion. to-
Cumulatively, though, we might, enough of us might know it. So I think to Tony's point, we can talk about that and see where we stand, but it's definitely should be one of our conversations.
We already talked about this.
I think,
We talked about having interviews.
Yeah, you're right,
as a
we
part of
did
this process. And the executive session was to come first, then interviews if necessary, and then voting. So
I'd like to actually support Jim's, I think this should be part of the discussion of the process. I don't think we need to wait until, we go to executive session, because I think, sorry, Jim, sorry for the mess. I think of how you hire somebody. Everybody wants an interview for somebody they're going to hire. These are essentially people who are going to be working for us in this process. And regardless of what we decide in the executive session, I think part of the process should be interviews, so we get a sense of who the people are. I thought, I appreciate all the work you did of organizing who they were and the profession and all that. And I appreciate all the, being able to see all the applications together. But I cannot even fathom making this decision without talking to people. So I think we should amend the process.
Well, the process already included in, interviews if necessary, so that's really need to be done.
If necessary, it's, at least in my mind, it's already necessary.
Okay, so it's in the process.
There's one other point I wanted to raise, and that this is a point I've been on the bubble on for a long time. Tony has proposed a 9-member commission and 3 committees to separate out the work. And part of that is to move this along quickly and get some speed, and I appreciate that. But I'm going back and forth on whether that's the right method or whether a smaller commission that is unified and considers every provision together, which will take longer, to be sure, but then you have the full group thinking about the full thing, rather than it being parceled out. My concern is that the small committees, if they work properly, they're gonna do a lot of work, do a lot of digging, consider a lot of options, and to replicate that for the whole committee, so they really understand the options and the drivers, and what we decided. I'm on the bubble on that, what's best. I'm kind of leaning toward a smaller committee and unified, a smaller commission, rather than having 9 so we can have 3 subcommittees. But I'd really like the rest of you, your thoughts on that. That's something that I've been thinking about for a
What
while.
kind of number are you thinking?
7.
I think that the reason I chose to separate out into the 3 committees is to provide a focus on a particular area. And the charter does divide itself into the 3 nice bite-sized areas. And those 3 folks can really dig in and do a deep dive on those areas and present their findings and their recommendations to the full group. And if they do a good job on that, they're going to educate the entire group, and then the entire group will vote. I mean, the small groups won't be voting. They'll just be doing the work to present it and providing some focus. And so I think that's important, to be able to have some focus rather than have everybody look at every single thing.
But you could have focus on a larger group, it's just gonna take long. A smaller group.
I tend to agree with Jim. It's, you all know, unfortunately, I was Tony's taking it. And I was unfortunately not able to be involved in the process because of personal reasons. I look back at how years ago, when we had the financial review committee, when we had, and Jim was a major part of it, trying to decide what to do about the shortfall of income for the city's budget. And it was a larger group, but everything was discussed together. And yes, it took a little bit more time, but it's that cohesiveness of everybody getting in on that process. You have the advantage. I understand, Tony, you say you can have the 3 people and they'll educate everybody else. But in the larger number, you have the advantage of everybody having more contributors. And I think in this situation, that is a valuable process. So I would favor that. And I understand, Tony, you want it, part of that is to move the process along more quickly. I don't feel the urgency, the amount of time you might save on that compared to what you do.
Well, I think the process as outlined is good. I don't see the whole group not being able to have a say in everything, just because a group of 3 is focusing on a particular area. I think the way I envision this happening is there would be certain questions asked, and then that group would debate and answer the questions. A question like, just an example, should we provide in our charter for remote remote meetings and remote voting. 3 people can do the pros and cons on that, come up with what they think is best, and then present it to the board. Those would be the kinds of things that I think that the commission would look at with the finance review commission. That was just an open slate of what can we do to change the finances of the city. There were a lot of different ideas that come. We have a finite document that's 7.5 pages long. Each group can look at 2.5 pages and really dig into it and present their thoughts to the entire group. The entire group votes. The small group doesn't vote. I think that's a very good process, and I don't think we should change it at this point in time.
Well, as I recall with the finance committee, it wasn't actually one big massive plate. It was a lot of different types of ideas. Jim, you recall the same?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
I think the finance committee, my recollection of the financial review committee, and was part of it, was that it wasn't just one big idea. In other words, the major idea was how to save the city's surfaces.
I don't think I said one major idea. There are a lot of different things that could go into changing the finances of the city. One was whether you could farm out dispatch or not. Another was how many secretaries to have. There were lots of different things, but those were just ideas. You didn't come up with the ideas. This is a finite document that needs to be looked at. There's infinite ways that you can improve your finances.
But Tony, I'm just listening here. Isn't exactly what you're saying is what commends it to be with Jim and Scott saying how it should be organized, that it is a finite document? It's not, 100-page document that, gee, this thing's a bit unmanageable. This is so big. It's finite. And just like we have juries, you can have a complicated case or a simple case, but you always require the whole jury to sit and hear everything, because different people, and the reason for that is because different people hear different things. Different things resonate with them, and they come up with different ideas, and they reflect off each other, the members of it, as a whole. That's why juries have to sit together. You don't have 3 of the juries deciding intent, 3 deciding something else. You don't break up a jury. You let everybody hear it all, because the wisdom is that it's the collective that is smarter than any 1, 2, or 3 people. So you have everyone hear it all, and you get to an answer.
The jury is just deciding on guilt or innocence or liability or not. We've got lots of different aspects of this that can be looked at, I think, better by a smaller committee and presented to the larger group.
Yeah.
I think, we could go with the set number of time, it's an odd number still, and then leave it to the commission to decide for themselves, how they're gonna divvy up responsibility, and,
That's
because it's up to them.
It's up to
It's
the
not up to
commission.
us,
Yeah,
it's up
just-
to them.
my concern of that is 9 people, that's a tough size to all deliberate together. That's why I was suggesting 7 if we did it unified.
I don't promise them.
7's better. I mean, if we're gonna keep it together, 7 is just a better number because it's less cumbersome,
It's easier to organize meetings.
easier to organize.
So if you're organizing meetings of 3, that's easier than meetings of 7.
But then you got them all. Well,
You have to get
We're not
together, not as up. I think that we've come up with a long debated and a well-debated system, and that we should just stick with it.
Other thoughts?
9 and then have them decide too, because it's an odd
Well,
number.
we have to select these people to join the commission. And so if we pick 9, there's gonna be 9.
Oh, yeah,
And so
What if we did 7 with 2 alternates?
that was another thing on my list about whether we need alternates. In any scenario, do we need alternates?
We already talked about all these,
Yeah, I
and
thought
decided not to do them.
I thought we decided not to do
We're
that.
kind of raising old questions. I think that
Challenge with alternates that I see is that if you're not at every meeting, not every meeting, but if you're not at both of the meetings, it's, I mean, you can't, it seems unfair to have somebody sit there and not really be able to have any feedback, and you can't bring them in at the end of the process. It seems unfair. to
I
person
agree
who's
with
an
all that,
alternate.
an alternate has to sit through everything.
Now,
I
by
agree.
the way,
At that point, they shouldn't be an alternate.
If early on we lost somebody early on, I guess we
We
could
have-
have a short list of regrets.
We have 32 applicants to choose.
That's what I'm saying, you
Replace
might
the
need to add people, I just don't know that you should have people sitting there.
Inevitably, no, not everyone's gonna come to every meeting, of course.
Oh,
They have to have it.
Absolutely.
So like, I think 9 is reasonable. I mean, instead
Oh,
of
I don't have a,
down-
I don't really have a strong preference, because I think the commission's gonna, I agree with you.
I just-
I think the commission's gonna organize themselves,
Yeah,
even if we offer some potential suggestions of how other commissions organize themselves, they're gonna do that as they should. I don't have a strong feeling between 7 and 9, I mean, if, we don't know how they're gonna organize themselves, the problem is 9 a little big if they do it as a whole? Yes. Is 7 a little small if they start to divvy up some of the work? Yes. But how do we make that call? The only thing I do feel is that have alternates sit there and not have a voice in it seems unfair, and sort of like treating them like they're, you know, like not,
Alternates.
they are alternates, but they're like non-roster players, they're just sort of sitting there waiting for someone to get hurt.
We had those and then we decided not to have them, those were the 3 liaisons.
Yeah, I mean, but also definitely have in the back of our mind that if somebody, after the first meeting or two can't do it, we can add somebody, I'm not saying that.
Again, we have
We have a
32
list.
people to
Yeah,
select.
I'm not saying that we couldn't add somebody if something happened.
I mean, we have 15 people here that get together on these meetings. 9 less than 15, we can do it.
We're scheduled a year in advance.
No, I mean.
Unless there's a conflict.
So I think, though, that you make a good point, that if you have somebody who's missing, that to me makes the argument for having a larger group,
Yeah.
because then one missing isn't as
Right.
impactful on. So that's why having groups of 3,
People will miss meetings, and that's gonna happen, they're gonna have personal matters, somebody's gonna get sick, we're gonna have to keep going forward without.
yeah.
And
If
the
it's-
groups of,
if it's a group
the
of
groups
3,
of
then
3
I
can
think,
schedule their own meetings when they can all be.
When they can all be there, that's on them.
That's on them. I mean, there'll be a chairman to this commission who's gonna be elected. And the commission is gonna set its own meetings, and they're gonna set it based on everybody looking at their calendars, instead of, something ahead where you end up with Christmas Day or the day before Christmas
Yeah.
on the calendar.
I think Kathy's, Dr. Bond's suggestion is the correct one. That the commission is the commission. The commission will elect its own leader. The commission should determine how it's gonna operate. It's an independent body, and I think we should respect that. And not try to predetermine for the commission how the commission is gonna work.
They
That's
all,
why they're a
they
commission.
all applied knowing what the process was.
I'm
Process
just
was
saying,
laid out.
well, then I'm suggesting, I agree with the doctor that we gotta let the commission do its job.
I would accept that as long as we present the option of the 3 committees to the commission and see if they want, which way they want to go.
It would-
You
that would
can't,
be
you can't
up to
give
them.
them no framework, that's asking them to go research commissions. We can give them
We need to give them framework.
some frameworks,
And
or
we need to give them,
frameworks.
we need to give them questions to consider, like the one I just threw out there. I have 5, everybody should be thinking about questions that should be answered by this commission. But I don't think changing the number is a good thing.
Also think about if you have 9 people in a room, maybe a lot of them don't know each other, just the dynamic as people do get to know each other, who works well together. They're gonna sort of split, I would imagine people would sort of
People
like
might
tag team
volunteer
things
to
and,
Look
yeah,
into something that they want to look
Right,
at,
right. So I do think it makes a lot of sense to,
And I'm not
Have
saying, and I
discretion.
do think 9 in a conversation is a little big, even though that's what we have, I do think it can be a little big. but I don't think it'll always be 9. I guess that's what you're trying to organize, it's not like, to your point, it's not like organizing our meetings. Yet, I'll be curious, it'll be a good study in how people can schedule, how many people a few weeks or a month or 2 out can all schedule on the same day. I know it's probably a challenge for us, and we've committed to do this, you know.
Again, it's a lot easier for 3 people to figure out how to.
Well,
do it.
it's a very good point. Very.
All right, I'm kind of honestly lost in the discussion as to, is there something happening here or going to happen, or? Well, let's say, I guess, at the interview mission, is that something we want to otherwise publicly conclude? That Tony's saying, oh, we already said we'd interview TBD. Do we want anything more?
I have a question, Steve. If we were able to do interviews, and since people can't always gather together, could we do virtual interviews so that people could call in or do Zoom or something like that? Would that be possible? Would we have to amend that because it's hard to get?
If you want to.
Members can't, because you don't have legislation authorizing members of the body to promote.
No, just for the interviews.
We'd be there.
You could have somebody who's being interviewed on video or audio. Yeah.
That way they don't.
Because we're asking a lot of community members who may or may not be appointed to the commission.
Could we do a Zoom interview?
For everyone.
Not for everybody. You don't have anything in place that would authorize you to.
But I think a lot of people would want to be.
Right.
I would think a lot of people would want to be in person.
We're
Just depending on this.
we're gonna set an arbitrary date that we can tell them about. You know, and I don't know if that's fair to everybody. We're gonna pick one day or 2, and what if they're not available? If we're really doing that many interviews.
Can we,
What we could do is send out what is that invite thing called?
email?
Like a video call?
Sign up genius.
Yeah, that thing. And ask people, we have their list, we have their emails, tell us when you're available over the next month. Tell us when you're available. And then that can be,
And is this,
concluded together, that can be mushed together as to when, groups of them may be able to be scheduled. And take it from there.
Do we have to interview everybody?
that's what
Is that-
Scott, is your intention to interview everyone?
No.
Or only like sort of,
Whoever is
That's-
doing it.
yeah, okay.
But I
Someone who isn't on their face qualified because they don't meet the year they're having.
I think I'd like to make sure that we vote on this commission by the end of the month, otherwise we're gonna be slipping out of our schedule.
I
So
agree.
can we have a special meeting? If we have interviews next week, in an executive session, I guess, if we can, and then have a special
That
meeting.
is, if you're interviewing, that is jamming.
Do we have to,
That is jamming people. If
We don't know how
If you're
many,
now saying they have to come in.
We don't know how many.
6 days.
so we don't know how many. We won't.
I would want to interview a number of them, quite a number of them, that I have no idea who they are.
Well, do you have to interview everybody that you don't know? Some of the resumes
I-
don't merit either.
I would want, as many as we possibly could. The interview process, I think, is gonna be, if not very important, the most important part of this.
You concur with that, Mr. Ruby? Is that a yes or no? No.
What's your concept?
You don't think interviews?
I'm sorry, maybe I didn't
You
hear
said you concurred about the interviews. I was asking you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. Yes, I think we should have interviews. I think per our discussions, we're gonna have a list of people who probably don't meet the qualifications or, and so I'm hopeful in that we can narrow down the field to not 34 or 32. And so that would accelerate the process of just those candidates that we think meet the highest qualifications of a very qualified person and start down that list. So
But the question that Scott asked was, do you think that that's the most important part of the application, the interview.
For people that none of us have a sense of or know, the answer is yes. Because I'm concerned that someone may look great on paper, but they come with an attitude of arrogance, or I know it all, or all kinds of things can just side. It only takes one on a committee to make that committee a painful experience. Right? One who just isn't collaborative, isn't a partner, isn't inquisitive, doesn't care, just, so, and you're never gonna, we've all made bad hires in our career, right? So I just,
After interviews.
yeah, after interviews, so you're never gonna get that perfect. But we need to do as best we can.
And I will just say, I can't conceive of, let's say it is hiring somebody, we're not actually hiring somebody. I cannot conceive of hiring somebody I've never talked to.
The question is that, and I'm floating this, I haven't really thought through how we decide who or how many we interview. I always assumed we would possibly interview some if we came to that point. The question is, if you apply for a job, not everybody gets an interview. They decide who gets an interview. If you apply for a job and they interviewed everybody, that would be unwieldy. And I guess that's my real question.
I think
Do
that's what-
we have a short list of people we decide to interview?
Yeah.
I think
That's why I think that the executive session is very important. We need to be able to talk about these people, see who we know, see who 4 people know and can recognize.
All right, everyone stop. The doctor is going to be allowed to speak.
If we are going to be interviewed for J agreement, can we introduce legislation next week so we can vote on to do them virtually for everyone?
I would love to do that.
Yeah, that'd be
Can we
amazing.
do that? That way it'll make it easier for everybody to
Yeah,
join.
I
We're
agree.
not virtual.
We could be
Yeah.
virtual too.
Oh, we could be virtual too.
Yeah, can we introduce legislation next week so that we can do that for the interview process virtually for everyone? So that we can make it better for everyone.
I support that.
I'm not
Steve,
supporting that. I
that's
think
not-
that's
So it's a
slippery slope.
single issue, for the purpose of interviewing Charter Review Commission candidates, and
Doesn't
For
have
no
to be
other
broader,
purpose.
doesn't have to be broader than that.
Well, do we not want commission members to be able to do it on a public Zoom call?
well, that's a separate issue, and we had talked about it previously, had a full direction on what to do. If you want legislation for next week dealing with this issue, we can do that for sure. If we start going down into what are, the constraints of Charter Review Commission activities that they're allowed to do online and that sort of thing, that's a broader discussion. I think it's a very, very short, simple piece of legislation to answer the first question, and then if you want to give them the authority to meet remotely, then have that conversation separately. But to get going on the interview process. So yeah, we can have that.
It's from a speed standpoint, having that option will open up everyone's calendars to a much greater extent. And it will be a faster process.
Yeah.
But for, to have the public Zoom call with the 3 subcommittees, if we go that route, the whole commission.
Oh, you're talking about the second part.
The second part.
So you're talking about everything. I don't know that faster is always better, and that's, like,
I agree, concern, but getting 9 members physically in a location. And if you recall, during Zoom time, we actually had a lot of audience dialed in, because I think in part it was easy.
Yeah, okay, now we're into where it gets, if they're going, because these are going to be public meetings for them.
Right.
This is where it gets really complicated, so far as, it's one thing for someone to come in themselves, if the whole commission is sitting here, and one person is zooming in. To broadcast back to them becomes a whole different operation here.
Okay, let me ask a question. Steve, can the interviews be in executive session? Yes. Okay, so we can, after we have this executive session, we can see how many people we think we want to interview. See if any of them are available to come in next week for an executive session before we vote. If they can't, if anybody who can't, we will try to accommodate through a Zoom.
I like
We might be able to interview 3 people or 4 people. 10-minute interview, 15-minute interview?
Yeah,
we might, be in an executive session, we can maybe
I
go
like,
forward.
I think that's a great compromise, it's respect, the key is it's would be respectful of those individuals.
If that doesn't work, can we have Steve just take this first bite and have
No, I
legislation?
think we should do both,
Both, okay.
both, yes,
Okay.
but if we can have in-person
Okay.
interviews in executive session next week, I think we should do that.
So see that, the baby steps, what?
So you want legislation to allow council to be able to, not next week, but you adopt the ordinance next week.
Yeah.
If it would allow council to interview candidates for charter review commission positions.
Right.
And all of council would be online? Everybody's on Zoom?
Yes, that's the only practical
Yeah.
way to do it, because we don't have, obviously, for reasons, the ability to do it here.
Well, we could come in here and all Zoom simultaneously.
But we don't,
This is, someone's gotta run this thing. It's gotta be scheduled so someone's available to run this thing. It's a bigger deal.
Kathy knows how to run
This
it.
is a bigger, this isn't a little meeting, this is.
But Rick, Kathy just said she knows how to run it.
Okay, so at a minimum, your availability is key. It's necessary.
What's our liability with sunshine law if our Zoom meeting doesn't happen because technology, Kathy can't run it?
You get an,
I'll be the backup.
there are several.
The guy who doesn't make attachment stickers.
Yeah, I
There are
wanna hear
several,
the answer.
there are
to that.
several
Doesn't
potential penalties for violations of
I didn't hear you.
Open Meeting Act. That you get an injunction against you. If there's a second violation, there can be removal from office. The city would end up paying attorneys' fees if they failed to abide by well-established rules. And you pay a statutory penalty for the violation.
We should try to do these in person.
I think that that's the best way to.
Well, here's my question, if we can do them in person, but some people can't, and we have failed Zoom, which hopefully that won't happen, can't we just adjourn and retry again, and then we don't have to, then we're not in violation of open meetings? To avoid a violation of open meetings laws, if our open meeting isn't working, I would think we just don't have the meeting. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean,
Let me point out to council that tonight,
I don't think that.
we have at one point, our power in this building dropped twice. Sheila's Zoom or streaming presentation shut down unexpectedly. It just shut down. She was looking at it and the screen's gone. And she struggled to
We
get
call
this
on
thing
phone.
to pick up again.
Yeah, but to be fair, nurses have two things.
I'm just saying,
There's hiccups.
it's blithe to simply say nothing can go wrong.
No,
First
we don't
caller
think that.
phone.
If something went wrong, which it rarely does here, but occasionally does, we would either choose not to meet. By the way, these are in executive session. We only have to
well,
open the meeting,
right, you have to open and close
close the meeting,
in open session.
in open session.
So I don't know if you're proposing that everyone was on Zoom for an interview. So you open the meeting, you go into the executive session. Presumably you invite people in to the executive session.
It's a separate room, Kathy.
And you know, how do you control for that? I'm sure there's ways to do it, I don't know. There are some, ways that it can fail. If there's an understanding that you can't get it done correctly, you're gonna shut it down. That's what you do.
I mean, that's a way to not violate open
If it
meetings laws,
doesn't
is to say,
work, you can.
we won't
come
meet
in.
if we can't do it right.
With all due respect, I've been to 150 council meetings, and this is the first one where we have power issue.
I'm just saying, things happen.
Yeah.
When we did Zoom, we had lots of problems.
That's
When we were Zoom
a good
interviews,
ratio.
we had lots of
But I can tell you that I've done many executive sessions via Zoom during COVID. And we went to a separate room and it was fine. It was our only choice and it worked fine. It was the only thing we could do and it worked. It wasn't my first choice. I'd rather be in the same room with everybody.
call him on the
Steve's gonna
phone?
try his,
Yeah.
Steve's gonna write something. This is ordinance 2024-24. There, discussion that voting methodology apparently was deemed problematic. Mr. Gentili has offered up a solution, and that's in the amended ordinance. Tony, you wanna discuss it since
Yeah,
you drafted it?
the method that we had originally come up with, would work. However, when I find that we have 32 applicants, and getting to the point where we're voting and tallying votes, this method where we give 9 points to our first choice, 8 to our second choice, and so on down the line, rather than 1 all the way through 32, means that we only have to tally 72 votes instead of 252. That would make the process a lot quicker, a lot more efficient, and it doesn't change the outcome at all.
And I just, my comment, I put this in the format that you see it. My comment is that the votes have to be in open session.
Correct.
There is no secret ballot permitted.
That I understand, but instead of having to,
Right, I was just adding a comment. I wasn't disagreeing with anything you said. I'm just saying.
we don't have to announce 252 votes, we only have to announce 72.
I'm sorry.
And tally them. I'm gonna bring in a laptop to try and tally them.
We're doing
So
our
the
top
final
9.
slate, we vote on in public.
That's my question was, you're
And
gonna
then you
read
have to say,
candidate 1, and if anyone wants to put that person at number 9, like, we have to go through the
That
list.
that process has to happen in an open session. So
You can, no.
somebody's saying, my number 1 with 9 votes is X, et cetera, down the list.
No, here's what we could do. Say, Scott, who's your number 1? And I take that person, log in 9 points. Who's your number 2? Just go around the room.
Right,
and do
that's
that.
what I'm saying.
That's in public.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So I guess this may be.
We don't have- In other words, we don't have to go down the list and say,
Can,
they didn't get any.
can people be by consensus eliminated from further consideration in the executive session? Is that having a vote essentially?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is having a vote in executive session to have a consensus developed in executive session. That's making a decision in executive session.
So
It's
people
not
cannot be,
permitted.
so people cannot be,
You can have your conversations, you can talk about pros and cons, you can talk about qualifications or whatever. But the actual voting, who's gonna get what votes has to happen in public.
what
We
about
can't
who's
have a
gonna
straw
get
vote.
interviewed?
That should happen in public.
Who's gonna get what?
Who's gonna get interviewed?
Unless somebody doesn't meet the criteria.
So when we reconvene and meet the meeting tonight, we can say that.
Your discussion of who's going to get interviewed should occur in public. You can talk about the qualifications and whether somebody is up to standard or not in executive session. But when you make decisions on how to proceed next, that's gotta occur in public.
We can't select the interviewees
You
in.
can't make any decisions in executive session. So deciding who's gonna get interviewed
Steve,
is a decision that you can't make in executive session.
Steve, could we decide in executive session, the first group of interviews will be these people? And then the next group of interviews, and then the next, so we're not eliminating anyone.
I
can make a choice.
I think you're making a decision.
Unless we're
Even a
doing
rank
like-
ordering, who's gonna proceed when, you're making a decision in executive session, you can't do that.
I got you.
It's 11 o'clock at night.
Oh my, that did not disturb, it went on. No, it went on. It was out of time.
Okay. All right. Anything else for our discussion tonight regarding the commission?
Now, this is, are we on 2024 dash?
We need to, I'll.
No, we're on 2024.
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Motion to adopt,
Yeah, you need to
Oh,
vote
we
on
have
roll call.
I thought, oh, yes, roll call.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Ms. St. John?
Yes.
Ms. Welton?
Yes.
Ms. Godin? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
And a
I'll move.
motion to adopt 2024-24.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Ms. St. John?
Yes.
Ms. Welton?
Yes.
Ms. Godin? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
Dr. Wong? Yes.
That's adopted. Good. We'll move on then to committees and department heads. Any department heads have anything to report? Do we have anything? We have P&Z meeting?
Discuss this now.
Oh.
We discussed the, thank
It
you,
seems
Sheila.
so long ago.
It does seem like a lot, well, it was a little while ago. We discussed the proposed sign ordinance, as we know, planning and zoning reviews, those types of ordinances for us, and offers suggestions and, thoughts. They didn't come to a conclusion yet. There were a lot of questions, more than usual at one of these planning and zoning meetings. There was some concern expressed regarding signs from one of the members, who said that he didn't was not necessarily favorable towards a lot of these signs. So that was an interesting thing to hear. They did not come out one way or the other on the ordinance and kind of deferred, I guess. I don't know if there's a date certain when they're gonna offer an opinion, although it is just an opinion.
Well, they didn't have the complete ordinance in front of them.
Right, there was a.
It wasn't,
Oh,
the
that's
accurate,
true.
the accurate
That's
ordinance
true.
wasn't in front of them.
They had three versions, I forgot that, you are correct. They had three versions, so there was some confusion over some of the details. For example, the piece about the lighting, the Kelvin piece, somehow wasn't in one of the versions, which I started talking about and why it was relevant, and then we realized they didn't have that. So, but they did ask some good questions. They seemed somewhat, I thought, favorable toward the work we were doing.
Right, and
But there's nothing.
the upshot was that a public hearing is necessary under it, and notice has been given for that public hearing, and already published. The hearing will be at 7:30 PM on Wednesday, July 17th of this year in these council chambers. And that will be when the public hearing will be.
And also, I would add, just as related, which was interesting, they did go to ABR. I wasn't sure why they went to ABR. I didn't recall them being directed to go there, but they did, whichever the reason. I thought, I listened to the conversation at ABR because I was really curious, because, I wanted to hear what they said. They had some good, kind of more global, they talked specifically about this instance, but they had some really global, comments about signs and and about this specific instance that I think would apply to many instances. And I would encourage people to listen to it. I thought it was very interesting to hear their comments. I thought that they made some really interesting comments. I also, I have some critique about the presentation they were given, and yet they still made these interesting comments. I thought the presentation didn't necessarily match up to the conversations that happen in planning and zoning. That's a different conversation perhaps. But I would commend and encourage anybody to listen to what the ABR said. I thought that they were really kind of specific, and it was worth the time.
The applicant appeared there because the applicant did leave a council meeting with impression that he was being encouraged to get some read from ABR in the meanwhile, because there was pushback from council about the sign. And I think the suggestion had been, go to ABR, see where, if you're gonna trim this up for council's purposes, let's see where something even would be acceptable down there. That absolutely was some conversation.
I
I didn't have it.
that
so-
wasn't my takeaway that they were going to go to ABR. I was a little uncomfortable because I know there have been times when community members have wanted to go to ABR and their calendar was full and they had to wait. Now, maybe that wasn't relevant at this point, I don't know, but I do know, for example, Mr. Goodman who came was deferred a month and then had to come back another time, his project was delayed. So I didn't love the idea of them going to ABR if they didn't have a variance.
People hadn't gone there for advisory opinions.
Yeah, I guess and that council advised them to go, I was a little surprised, I don't remember us advising them to go to ABR. That being said, I still think ABR's comments were very interesting.
That was our only committee, thank you, Norman. That was the only committee that needed to report, I believe. And I don't think our department heads have anything. I will make a surprise announcement to everyone that the Taste of Pepper Pike is this Sunday at 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock. This is, if you've seen the emails that have gone out from the city, from the department, general mail delivery, and from me personally the last few days, where we've been able to attach the menu. These restaurants are just, this is the best food I've ever seen in a Taste of Pepper Pike. This is going to be really good food. Everything from smoked duck to lobster, shrimp bisques. It's really going to be a fine spread. I don't know how you eat all of it. Sample it, it's a lot. Encourage, there are tickets available. I would really encourage you to come if you haven't already bought a ticket. If you know other people who you think you'd like to play with and enjoy at the event, invite them. We bought a bigger tent this year, so we have more vendors and we can accommodate people. And yeah, it's going to be a great event. And the rain is sliding the right direction for us, so that's good. That's all I have. Council. Oh, that's not all I have. I did mention earlier my Juneteenth statement. We did have a very successful participation in our Juneteenth event at Ursula last Saturday. I'm sorry if you missed it, and it was great. And it's something the city has done now for several years, and in partnership with Ursula College, and they've been a wonderful partner with us on this event. Now I'm done. Council. Anything? Not hearing anything, audience? Mr. Mayor?
Just briefly, because it's very late, when you're doing your meeting setup for the interviews, on there, you can get numerous licenses from the Orange Library. They can send out a notice to everybody. If you were talking about before that you had to open it up to the entire public to log into it, you can send out an email blast to everybody saying, here's the connection for the YouTube, where you go on there. And with that, anybody and everybody can come into it. As you're having your meeting right now, the way you have your individual computers right in front of you, each of you, just my thought on how it happens. A lot of them on here. So each of you would log into the website, and with that, I would put on 2 items, two connections in case one fails. Okay, during part of the meeting or whatever, we have a power glitch on here. Please switch over to the second one, and re-log in. This way, you have a So there are quick and easy ways to do it. And the last recommendation would be that you give people like 3 dates that would be available for them, rather than them coming back and saying, well, here's the dates I'm available. Council would say, July 1st, July 2nd, and July 3rd, which date of those, 3 dates, is convenient for you. Type of thing. So,
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Anyone else? Mr. Liston.
On the gate.
Where do you live, Richard?
Oh,
Gatesville's Boulevard.
yeah, it's directly to 29579 Gatesville Boulevard or 4853 Clay Street, depending which house you want. With regards, that's the Gatesville Boulevard, landscape plan. What's gonna be the next step? Is that cast in stone? Is there gonna be a review of that by the beautification committee? Or, are there gonna be public comments on it? Or where are we going from here on that?
Well, that whole process kind of began before the beautification committee was stood up. So it is scheduled, it's something that council has indicated they all want to have a voice in. So it is scheduled to return, as I mentioned earlier, in the evening to council for the 66% design process status for council to look at next week, and hopefully that process is not going to be finished next week as far as the park. But the pathway, hopefully, that's a breakout function of that.
That's
We'll be able to
part I
pass that
understand.
next week.
The
Walkway.
walkway itself, but the landscape already.
And the landscape will go on and on, and then just as here, they'll be, available.
And so will there be public hearings on it or public meetings on it or anything to?
And I think this is sort of the session that we've talked about. Council wants that more, we get more. We're gonna pay for it.
What do you think? Tell us your thoughts now.
Well, I think, it's a major change in the city, and I think it's my public comment, as you can get, I think would be desirable. I mean, I have some feelings on it, but then everybody has different feelings on these things. And it's nice, to get them all come in, and in this whole spirit of openness, collaboration, yada, yada, yada. It would seem that would make sense to me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Messer. Anyone else? All right. And at this point, I'm entertaining a motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing the appointment of public officials. Gee, could that be the charge?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Newell?
Yeah.
Ms. Acushnet?
Yes.
Ms. Welton?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yeah.
Mr. Jenkins? Dr. Wong?
There will be no public,
afterwards.
business conducted following the meeting.
One second, let me just give Kathy one other piece of information about that Zoom.